3, 2, 1, let's go! Hi everybody and welcome to another exciting edition of Boring JavaScript. I'm your host, the Virtual Void, aka Mike Smith, and today we're going to be talking about the Json object in JavaScript. Now what does Json do? Well, Json gives us the ability to serialize our JavaScript objects. What does serialize mean? Well, serialize means to take the JavaScript object and convert it to a string. Why would we want to do that? Well, there's a very good use case for this. Let's say we had our JavaScript application and then another application and we wanted to communicate between the two. The other application has no idea how to read the binary format of JavaScript objects. So we need a way to be able to safely transport data from the JavaScript over to the other application. And we do that by using strings. So the JSON object will then take that JavaScript object, convert it into a string, and then that other application can take it, do whatever it wants to with it, figure out how it needs to be able to read it. So it's very safe to be able to take that string from one place to another, or even out to the net. Doesn't really matter. So JSON, which by the way stands for JavaScript Object Notation, has two methods, Stringify and Parse. Stringify takes the JavaScript object and turns it into that string so it can be transported to other places, while Parse will take a JSON object already that maybe came from another application and convert it back into a JavaScript object. You want to see how they work? Let's get started. Okay, let's first take a look at the Stringify method with JSON. And it basically, as I said before, takes a JavaScript object and converts it into a string. Here is the command itself here on line number 11. This is the Stringify method called on the JSON object. And it takes one argument, and that is the JavaScript variable you wish to convert. Now, notice I'm not saying new JSON or anything like that. JSON just has two methods. You can think of it almost like these are static methods within the JSON object. Just like if you were to create your own class, you could say static Stringify, and it would be called exactly like what you're looking for here. I'm not going to go into that kind of detail. But the thing here is that Stringify is a method on the JSON object, and all it takes is a variable. In this case, my variable is a object. Has three properties: name, alive, and stats. And stats itself has three properties: height, weight, and clause. So let's see what json.stringify does with it. Let's flip over to node and let's type in node stringify. And whoop, there it is. Here is my string. Notice what it's done here. Here's my key name and the value, key name, value, that's what a Boolean would look like, key name, and notice it went ahead and went inside stats and got all the data within stats. So here's what a number would look like, and here again is another Boolean. So you can tell here JSON string contains all the information we need to be able to pass that data from one application to another. And since it's a string, it's a very safe way to be able to transport data from one to another. Now, does it have to be an object? No, it could be other things. Let's take a look at an array, for example. So let's flip back over to our code, and I will comment out this code and bring up some other code. Let's just get this back up on the screen to make sure we got everything on the screen there. There we go. Okay, so now I've got this code up here. It's a very simple little array. And I'm going to do a console.log on Stringify, just console.log the Stringify on the JSON object. So let's flip back over to Node. Let's just clear our screen and do Node Stringify again. And that's what a JSON string would look like if it was an array. Now, what if we had objects within each of these arrays? It would parse each one of those particular objects too. So again, JSON.Stringify is used to take a JavaScript variable and convert it into a string that then can be safely sent over from one application to another or across the net. Next, let's take a look at the parse statement, or excuse me, the parse method. So now let's take a look at the json.parse method, and it's the exact opposite of the Stringify. It will take a valid JSON string and it will convert it into a JavaScript variable. So as long as it's a valid string, everything is going to work great. Well, let's take a quick look. Here's my code. I have taken the exact copy of the data that I got from the Stringify operation in the last segment of the video, and I put it into my variable. Here is the json.parse. Just like the json.stringify, I don't have to call new or anything like this. This is a static method, so I'm just calling json.parse. It takes one argument, and that is the JSON string itself. This is, again, a valid JSON string. And that will convert it into a valid JavaScript object, which I'm putting inside my cat. So if everything works correctly, I should be able to have my cat have three properties: name, alive, and stats. And stats should have three properties: height, weight, and clause. See if it works. Of course you do. Let's take a quick look, and let's go over to node parse. Yep, there it is. My name is Fluffy, my cat is alive, and it has the stats of height, weight, and clause. So it now converted that valid JSON string over into a JavaScript variable. Now, does this have to be an object? No, it could be anything as long as it's valid JSON string. So what happens if it is not a valid JSON string? Well, let's find out. One of the requirements is that all strings have to be double quoted. So notice here that my key name is quoted, as is the string itself. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the quotes off of alive. That will make it an invalid JSON string because every string name, every key especially, must always be quoted. So if we were to save that, and let's flip back over to our code. Let's clear the screen and do parse. Boom, shakalaka. Yep, crash. So that's what will happen if the JSON string is not valid. So if you're running your applications and you ever get this kind of error message like this, now this is Node. Obviously, you're going to get something slightly different if you're within a browser. You now know that your JSON string is invalid, so you can go to the person who created that JSON string and tell them you better fix their stuff and get it put together correctly. So that's how JSON parse could even be used to be able to validate JSON strings. Now, can all JavaScript objects be converted to JSON? And the answer is no. And I'm going to show you a very good example of that next. So when can a JavaScript variable not be made into a valid JSON string? Well, let me show you a very good example here. I have a cat class. And within this cat class, you can have multiple children. And within this cat class, you can point back to the parent itself. So when I create a cat, if parent is null, we just don't worry about anything. But if I create a new cat, as I've done here on line 15, and I pass it a parent cat, I'm basically saying that this particular cat, this kitten, is associated with this parent cat. So what will happen when the kitten is created, it's going to go back to the parent cat and add that cat to its children. So the effect is here is that my cat, once I added in kitten 1, kitten 2, and kitten 3, the fact of the matter is that my cat would have 3 children within the array and no parent cat. My kitten 1, my kitten 2, and my kitten 3 will have a parent cat but no children. And of course, this makes sense logically. You have the cat and kitten 1, kitten 2, kitten 3. My cat has no parent but has 3 children. Each kitten has no children but a parent cat. Real simple. I mean, this is a basic way to construct objects. A quick little pointer back from the kittens to the parent and from the parents to the kittens. So you want to take a look, see what happens? Let's go over to Node and type in Node recursive. Whoosh! Blows up. And the reason it blows up is because of this error right here. Converting circular structure to JSON. What exactly does that mean? Well, that's basically why I call this file recursive. I have a recursive or a circular pattern built into my JSON. So let me explain to you exactly what happened. Let's go back over to our code. When I created the first cat, I set children to blank and the parent cat was 0. When I created my first kitten, when I created my first kitten, I said, oh, I've got a parent called my cat. So I first of all created the kitten and told the parent of the kitten that it was the parent cat. And then, of course, with the parent cat, I pushed the children, or pushed the original cat back to the children array. So I ended up with, as I said earlier, 3 children in the children array for my cat and then each of the children have a parent cat. So what happens? So JSON Stringify said, okay, let's see, parent cat, let's start work with you. We got children there. Okay, so we need to go parse all those children. So let's parse the children. So we go down to the children, which is my kitten 1, and no children, that's fine. Oh, parent cat. Okay, so we now need to parse the parent cat. So now we go back to my cat. We go back to my cat, it says, oh, I got 3 children. We need to parse each one of those. So it goes back to kitten number 1, and in kitten number 1 it says, oh, no children, but I've got a parent cat. So now we go back to my cat. So we go back to my cat, and we go into this children saying, oh, we got 3 children here. Let's go to the first child. The first child is my kitten. If we go back to my kitten, it says, oh, I've got a parent cat. Here's my cat. And we go back to my cat, and you kind of see what happens here. We're just in an endless loop, one after another, going from the parent cat to the child, to the parent cat to the child, to the parent cat to the child. And obviously, you don't want to crash your entire internet by having a simple endless loop. So luckily, JavaScript is smart enough to be able to tell us, hey, you know, this isn't going to work. You've got a circular structure here, and I need to have a structure that I can eventually figure out that there's some sort of ending to. So this is a type of example, and it's a very common example of a JavaScript variable that cannot be converted over. Where would you find this in real life? Well, do a, if you get into the JavaScript of the browsers, do a document get element ID of a particular HTML element and try to do a JSON Stringify on that. It'll give you the exact same error. And the reason why is that each HTML element will always, may or may not have children. Most likely they will have children, but it will also always have a parent pointer. And that parent pointer, will, once it gets that parent pointer is going to have children, and you'll just keep flipping one after another. So this is an example of how a JavaScript variable cannot be converted over to a JSON string. And that's all there is for JSON Stringify and JSON.parse. I hope you enjoyed our video. Hope I didn't bore you to death. Please check out all of our videos at www.boringjavascript.com. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, or check out everything we have at www.thevirtualvoid.com. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you later.